Hello and welcome to my channel. In this tutorial we're gonna do this very easy one row repeat stitch. It's thick. If you like to make a blanket, a scarf or a hat, I think it's nice. The sides look okay. So if you like to try this stitch, give it a try. It's just one row repeat in a way. It's reversible, so I think for you guys, the beginners, this will be easy to do and practice the stitches. Okay, with this stitch, we're gonna chain even numbers. I chain here 10. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna skip the first chain. We're gonna skip the first chain, and in the second chain from the hook, we're gonna go in there and we're gonna do a single crochet. So this row, we're gonna do only single crochets in each chain. So move to the next chain and we're gonna do single crochet. It's a little bit bumpy, this one, but not so bumpy. So if you want to do a hat or even a scarf, I think looks nice. So we're gonna do single crochet in each stitch. Well, it appears to be only one row repeat. It's just there is some small changes in that one row repeat. So the first row, it's first and only single crochet, chain 1, turn your work, and now in the first stitch here we're gonna do a slip stitch. Do a slip stitch, then in the next stitch pull up a loop, yarn over the hook, go back again into the same stitch, pull up a loop. You have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull the yarn through all these 4 loops, move to the next stitch, and we're gonna do a slip stitch. So we're gonna alternate like this. Next stitch, we're gonna go in there, pick up a loop, yarn over the hook, go back again into the same stitch and pull another loop. You have 4 loops, yarn over and pull the yarn through all 4 loops. Next stitch, we're gonna do a slip stitch. Now the next stitch, we're gonna go in there, pull up a loop, yarn over the hook, go back again into the same stitch, pull up a loop, 4 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull the yarn through all 4 loops. Next stitch, we're gonna do a slip stitch. The next stitch we're gonna pick up loops. So pick up a loop, yarn over the hook, go back again into the same stitch, pull another loop, 4 loops, pull the yarn through all 4 loops, and in the last stitch here we're gonna do a slip stitch. So we started with a slip stitch, we're gonna finish with a slip stitch this row, chain 1, turn your work. It's gonna look like this. Now you finish the last row, you finish with a slip stitch. Well, when you turn your work and the first stitch, we're gonna go in there into the first stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over the hook, go back again into the same stitch, pull up a loop, 4 loops on the hook, pull the yarn through all 4 loops. What you're gonna do, you're gonna do all these picking up loops into the slip stitch from the previous row and a slip stitch into all this from the previous row. So the next stitch, we're gonna do a slip stitch. This is the next stitch, is the slip stitch from the previous row. So we're gonna go in there, pick up a loop, yarn over the hook, go back again into the same stitch, pull another loop, pull the yarn through all 4 loops. The next one is gonna be a slip stitch. Next stitch, pick up a loop, and you have 4 loops, pull the yarn through all 4 loops. So this is the stitch that we're gonna keep repeating. The next stitch is a slip stitch. So the last stitch, we're gonna go in there and we're gonna pick up a loop. It's like a puff. We're gonna do a puff, yarn over the hook, go back again and pull another loop. Pull the yarn through all 4 loops, chain 1, turn your work. And now, because we finish, let's say, with a puff, when we turn, and in the first stitch, which is the puff stitch, we're gonna do a slip stitch. So you're gonna finish with a slip stitch in the last stitch. And go in there and do the next stitch. We're gonna do a puff. So pull up a loop, yarn over the hook, go back again and pull another loop. 4 loops on the hook, pull the yarn through all 4 loops. Next stitch, which is the puff from the previous row, we're gonna do a slip stitch. Next stitch, we're gonna do a puff. So the next stitch is the puff from the previous row, so we're gonna go into that next stitch and we're gonna do a slip stitch. The next stitch is the slip stitch from the previous row, so you're gonna go in there and do a puff. The next one, it's a slip stitch. Well, it's a very easy stitch, it goes really fast. So the next stitch we have here is the slip stitch from the previous row, so we're gonna do a puff. The last stitch is here, we're gonna go in there and we're gonna do a slip stitch. Chain 1, and because you finish with a slip stitch, the next row when you start in the first stitch here, we're gonna do a puff. So you go in there, pick up a loop, yarn over the hook, go back again and pick up another loop. You have 4 loops, pull the yarn through all 4 loops. The next stitch is the puff stitch from the previous row, so we're gonna do a slip stitch. You're gonna alternate like this. So the next stitch is here. You're gonna have to be careful because the slip stitch is so small that if you're not paying attention, you miss this. So you go in there and do a puff. The next stitch is slip stitch, and so on. I think you got the idea. So the next stitch is puff. The next one is slip stitch. And this one, you know, has this these lines, so it's gonna look a little bit different, and it goes fast, this one. Slip stitch, and because we started with the puff, we're gonna finish in the last stitch here with the puff, because we did a slip stitch previous stitch. Chain 1, and because you finish with the puff, now when you turn your work in the first stitch here, you're gonna start with a slip stitch. Okay, I'm gonna do this row and then I'm gonna stop. So the next stitch here, it's the puff. Next, slip stitch. Next, it's the puff. Slip stitch, puff, and so on. It's very easy, so if you like this kind of texture, a little bit bumpy and all that, you can do this this stitch. Four loops, pull the yarn through all 4 loops. The last stitch, it's here, this one, so we're gonna go in there and we're gonna do a slip stitch, chain 1, and then you start, you finish with the slip stitch, then the next row you're gonna start with the puff. So the first stitch is right here, so you start with the puff and so on. Yeah, it's very easy, goes really fast. Might eat some yarn this this stitch. It looks like this, but it's, you know, it's thick. This yarn recommends that I should use, I think, 4 or 4.5 millimeter crochet hook, but I was working with a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. Yeah, it's really goes really fast. Let me put this a little bit like that. Goes really fast and it's dense, So if you don't want the work to have too many openings, I think this stitch is nice. So these are the sides. Looks like this on this side. It's reversible, front and back the same. It has this, you know, you can see the lines. Yeah, it's really nice. So we worked this piece here. Yeah, you can try and do this, especially you guys are beginners. This is really nice and goes really fast. You can make your first blanket or hat or scarf, whatever you want to make. Okay, well, thank you for watching. Have a good day.